Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 16th episode of the RK Leadership Podcast, where we help empower tomorrow's leaders through sharing of knowledge, experience, and inspiring stories. My name is Rob Cameronpour, and my special guest today is Chris Evard from the Evard Coaching and Consulting Company. Now, Chris has been doing a lot of sales coaching and training, and he held several leadership roles at Harley Davidson. I'll let Chris introduce himself a little briefly, afterwards. And before he does that, I just want to say thank you, Chris, for giving me your time this afternoon to speak with everyone. I think you've got a great deal of leadership experience and knowledge that I think people will find useful. So without any further ado, again, thank you very much for joining me today, Chris.
Hey, Rob, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be able to give some good insights. And even if just one or two folks can pull something from it, I think we did a good job today.
That's it. That's exactly it. So, Chris, if you don't mind, can you walk us through your journey and how you got to where you are today? And, briefly, walk us through that path.
Yeah, so depending on at what point you would have asked me throughout my career, it started at different points. I could draw coaching back and leadership back to coaching young kids in soccer. I took that more seriously than what my peers seemed to have with different certifications and everything. But then in my professional career, getting the opportunity within different Harley Davidson franchises, getting to work in different leadership roles with them and under a slew of different processes, leadership ideals. It was neat to get to see different levels of success achieved in different ways. So I've always been a studier. And from day one, I study what I'm doing as well as what my peers are doing, and I try and impact them. And I've always figured if you can help the people around you, you don't really have to worry about yourself. So that's what led me to leadership. And then getting to work with the different teams, how neat is it that we're able to impact such a large number of people by helping these leaders better communicate, better lead, drive better results. The results are endless.
That's right. Awesome. So, Chris, as you're going through your leadership journey, in different organizations, at different places inside of Harley Davidson, did you find yourself being, a good leader right off the bat, or where did you get to a point that you had that self-reflection and said, shit, I need to do this better? And how did you get that feedback?
It's a really good question, Rob. So no, I was not good right off the bat. I was young for the leadership roles that I had. That might have, brought in some ego here or there. I always do try and, reflect on myself on what I could do better, what I could do different. But those early years were trial and error. And I will say I had a mentor, someone on our ownership team who worked as a direct supervisor. He was the one that really pulled me aside and said the content of the training sessions that we were delivering was exceptional, but the energy level was too low. It wasn't being received. And a lot of times in a dealership setting, these are happening early in the morning, guys are just getting their coffee or their energy drinks, whatever it might be. But I had to reflect on that for a while because, I tasked myself with making sure these guys are successful. Their days are a little bit easier. We can help drive them through some of the tougher points of sales. And so I reflected on that for quite a while. And we ended up changing our setting. I could actually take a step back and give my wife some credit here as well. She said, Chris, just quit worrying about what everybody thinks and be yourself. You're an ultra positive person. You get extremely passionate about being positive and how you're interacting with others. She said, just take the mask off essentially and, let them see how weird you actually are. And so I did. We changed the setting of our meetings. We went from, a war room type long table where everybody sits at, half of them have a hooded sweatshirt up and maybe falling asleep, to everybody on our feet. It was no more classroom style sessions. Everything became activity based at that point. And even then, there was trial and error in some of the activities, but you could tell pretty quickly that the response was massively different from being on our feet, letting the energy out, and from being at that table. The other piece I started doing was managers are required to start the training sessions. And it's funny, when I mention that in discovery calls now, they think, oh, I'm going to lead it. No, I mean, you start the training as in you're in the hot seat. You're taking all the objections and you're taking the pressure off of your team. This system works even better when you fail as the leader right off the bat in some quick objection handling. Show them what a failure looks like.
That's right.
Show them how to come back from it. Whether it be in that moment or maybe even the next day. Hey guys, I need that same objection or similar. I want to show you. I think I've got it nailed this time. So I really love it when leaders can model the behavior that they're looking for. We're not leaders because we're perfect. We're leaders because of how we handle when things are not perfect.
That's right. So lead by example.
You got it.
Or walk the talk. So there's a lot of things I want to ask from what you just brought up, but I want to take it back to a specific point where you said you kind of weren't being yourself. So again, as a leader, it's so important to be your authentic self. And I try to tell people all the time that eventually your true self will always come out. So why not be that authentic self? And it's so important, again, as in leadership. So would you say, again, when you talk about your energy levels, you spoke about your energy levels, would you say you were an introvert and you didn't have that kind of energy, or were you an extrovert that was kind of shy or insecure about your leadership style? What was it, if you can kind of take me back to that point?
I was an introvert who was introduced to sales through helping a friend. So, a friend needed help for the summer in the power sports industry. I said, look, I don't like salesmen. And he says, I just need your help for a summer. And I'm a sucker to help people. And so I jumped in that summer, I helped him out. And what I found was introverts can make the absolute best salespeople. And then in turn, hopefully down the road, sales leaders. An introvert is not going to bully somebody into it. What we're going to do is we're going to find a way to help our customers. So whether you're the introvert leader, you're going to find a way to help your team have an easier day. You're going to do the studying and the sharing, essentially, to make sure that the quality is high. We never, introverts in particular, never want to sell anything that a customer doesn't need. I never want to sell something to one of my sales managers that is not going to help them, accomplish their daily tasks. So I think being an introvert can be a big advantage as long as you make it your advantage. Because I do tend to have more self-reflection time, I think, is really what I get out of that. So.
Nice. So there is a lot of, I would say stereotypical comments that introverts don't make good leaders because they're not the loudest in the room. And even I myself wasn't always the loudest person, or nor do I care to be the loudest person, to be honest with you. What advice would you give the introverts out there who want to get into leadership roles but have that, insecurities that they're not good enough?
So I will say you're not supposed to pick favorites, but introverts are my favorite to work with because the transition to leadership, I believe, is it's more genuine. So to illustrate that, a loud extrovert can come into a room and give off leadership qualities, like you said, just by being the loudest guy in the room. The leaders I've always enjoyed following, you tend not to hear until last. They're the quiet guys. They're soaking in what everyone has to say and then bringing it all together and putting a bow on it, which for an introvert, I think is a big advantage when you can tell them, hey, look, you get to be in this room and you want all of the people on your team to have their their moment to speak and share prior to yours. That almost takes the pressure off of an introvert, right?
That's
And then
right.
the other piece that I like to lean into, and you and I have touched base on this before, but it's to lead with grace and humility and
Mm.
caring. So if you can teach that introvert who has an opportunity in leadership, but they're being hesitant about it, look, you can be the absolute best leader of all time this organization has ever seen if you lean into caring about them. So as
Yes,
introverts, we might be, argument averse, or we might avoid some of the tough conversations. But when you can encourage that introvert that, hey, you're not being a tough guy here, that's not required in good leadership. Caring is required. So you can go to that accountability conversation and you can say, look, Rob, we've worked together for a while. I've grown to really care about you, and it doesn't seem like we're hitting key performance indicators, where you used to, or seems like we might be missing this piece of the process. Is there something going on that I can help with?
that's right.
And you just lean into caring, and all of a sudden, being a leader is extremely easy for an introvert, and it's phenomenal for the team because now they're being led by someone who cares about them, not someone who cares about being the loudest in the room or being showy. And so, yeah, introverts, I think, need to lean into it.
That's right. No, those are great points, Chris. And again, something else that a lot of people think is just because you're a leader, you have to be that tough one and rule by the iron fist, as they see some of the leaders out in the world doing it. But in reality, again, my philosophy is lead with love, and I think that caring piece is so important because if you don't have empathy for people, and again, you're dealing with human beings here, not robots or animals. It goes such a long way, Chris.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I've had I've got guys that I work with now. That's a piece we're working on. So they have been taught by managers prior to them, and it's always been tough, hard nosed. And look, I'll admit I've seen those guys get results. I have seen, the key performance indicators are hit, the profitability's there, the margins look great, and they are able to drive that for, a period of time. I would challenge it in that I believe carrying through grace or carrying through love or leading through love, as you say, which I love that. It will level things out. So you're not going to ride the roller coaster of up and down, So the hard nose thing can get results. I don't want to bash that guy or those folks that run that way. It's not for me. And I will say that the teams that I work with, they tend to have longer tenure in their organizations because they lead through caring, through love.
That's right. No, that's amazing. And and I want to take you back to the Harley Davidson days, Chris. You spent quite a bit of time there. I want you to talk about the culture and leadership in specifically what did you learn from that culture and leadership that have kind of shifted your way of thinking now that you've got your own coaching and consulting company.
Ooh, well, I mean, we could talk all day on this one. I value my time with different Harley Davidson franchises to a very high degree. I believe anybody interested in getting into sales, power sports is a very fun way to do that. And any dealership, you get a high volume of repetitions in deal making and deal structures. So, if you want to get into sales, dealerships can be very run and gun and, some iron fist leadership, although we are starting to see that change a bit. But the repetitions are irreplaceable. So, early on, I worked for a larger group here in the Midwest, and that particular dealership principal, he was known for being very tough, very hard nosed. And I will say I did learn a lot from him. Some things not to do, some things to do. There is a time that you got to be tough, whether it's on yourself or, maybe one or two people here or there. But I will say the bulk of my growth came from when I took a step back in position there was an opportunity that came up with another group, an up and coming group, younger owners that had more of an emphasis on process and people. And I knew, my career, and I had to keep moving up. I do not have it in me to stay stagnant. I believe in 1% better every day. It could be the smallest win, but I'm going to find a win out of that day. And these gentlemen operated under that same guise. And with them, we ended up developing core values that I kept for myself, and we ended up implementing with our team there at the dealership that we then scattered to all of our dealerships. Um, they gave me a lot of freedom to be able to build different programs to help certify our teams that were coming in, because we did, with the ebb and flow of seasons in power sports, we had guys coming and going. However, I would challenge that we had one of the lower turnovers because of how we led. Um, those guys they gave me the freedom to make errors. And I remember on my interview day, that was the final interview. That was one of the questions. I wanted the freedom to make errors. I know I'm human, and I don't want to be scared or gun shy. So I clarified that they would give me that freedom, and I hadn't thought too much further about that. But in turn, I ended up then extending that freedom to my team. So as long as we're willing to talk about it, review it, and grow from it, it doesn't need to be a bad conversation when there's an error.
That's right.
So, some are bigger than others, and some might have a sadder tone to them because it was a big dollar amount, but everybody deserves a grace to make those mistakes. I've been learning a lot about the learning cycle, and the most growth comes from actually not just when you attempt and then fail, but then when you review after that failure. The review piece is critical. So many teams stop. They'll make an attempt, it'll fail. Oh, that doesn't work. We end here. But the teams that go back and review, what can we control? What could we have done differently? They're the ones that really see the growth. So these guys taught me the importance of process, a unique process, and standing by it. Very data driven, very, very data driven, which you'll hear a lot of teams talk about, spreadsheet owners, and they're ruling by the data, hiring and firing by the data. I don't believe, we still have people. There's a people element here we cannot get away from. However, that data, holy cow, it excites me, because it leads us in how to have conversations with our people, or maybe not how. That's what you and I help them with, is how to have these conversations. But that data is going to help dictate what we're having the conversation about. So you really have to blend the two. It seems I always hear people talk about one or the other. But these particular guys, I believe they're up to 5 dealers now, this group. And they give their people the freedom to make some errors and grow and hopefully impact their team, their group business that's going to be there longer than us, right?
That's right.
So I think they're just going to see tons of benefit over the years from this, and they have. So I've been with 4 different Harley Davidson dealer groups, and these guys by far, they knock it out of the park. Every day is continuous improvement. They're in performance groups. They're talking coaching with the other dealers in that group,
Nice.
even outside of their meetings. They're early implementers for any program that Harley brings. I mean, they want to assist you in making your day more successful and more enjoyable. And to me, we've got to spread that around the world, right?
Absolutely. No, and it's great. You talk about the data part of it. Data is important in terms of where you get the facts and figures to actually speak to your team or the individual about. And I'm still like shocked, Chris, as to some companies don't even have scorecards or goals or KPIs. I don't know how they're measuring things. They're just winging it or whatever they're doing. But I think, again, like you said, there's a human aspect to it. So it can't be just, okay, the data is right, everything, we live by the data. But I think when you incorporate both of them together, it's very powerful.
Yeah. Yep.
So
I feel like I might have rambled there. I might need a nudge if I'm going too long.
no,
Okay.
no, you're good. You're good. So you mentioned something else, which, it's a good segue for me to get into, is you talk about core values. And I know you and I talked about, your core values, which I'm hoping that you can share with the audience, because you've got an acronym made up for it. But I also want you to talk about the importance of having core values, not only on a personal level, but on a professional level as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you talk about your core values are going to be essentially your sails for the boat, right? The wind is always going to blow. The core values are going to help you make sure you land in the right spot. So, yeah, in one of our former conversations, I gave you the acronym, and for me, anybody that's in power sports will laugh and know that we have acronyms for everything, and I personally am no exception. So, docket is my acronym there, DOCET, and the D is for discipline. Early on in those younger days, I relied on motivation a lot. And you and I both know that, as kids get older and schedules get hectic and more people are pulling here, there, and everywhere, motivation can be tough to come by, but staying disciplined to the process, right? Um, the O is ownership. This one is huge for me. I lean into ownership questions a lot in interviews. Um,
Mm,
so if you don't have the ability to take ownership of any of your situation, there's not a whole lot coaching or consulting can do for you. Ownership is critical, and the situation might even have been dictated by a billion other people, but I just want you to own what you can control, right?
that's right.
So, step one in continuing to improve, which happens to be the C in docket, continuous improvement. I'm a big believer in no day wasted. Even a small improvement over time, will move mountains. So, I'm trying to think of who even said it. The reason for time is that not everything happens at once. Mark Twain, I think it was. But that almost took the pressure valve off of me and let me know that I don't need to hit all that. I don't need to be perfect tomorrow. I'm
That's
just
right.
going to get a little bit better. And it's funny, once you soak that in, you realize, oh, I'm never going to be perfect. I'm going to be 80 and I'll still be learning. So let's see, that's C, continuous improvement. E, we talked about earlier as well, enthusiasm, right? That was taking the introvert mask off. And, this is one area where you're excited, Chris, let that excitement out. Um, so, hey, your team needs to see you enthusiastic about helping them, about helping others. And they in turn can turn around, if we're affecting salespeople, if we're leading salespeople, which is who I tend to help, they can turn around and now they can have enthusiasm for helping the customer. And then T in docket is going to be teamwork. You've got to have that team around you. So no man no man or woman can do it on their own. You've got to be surrounded by good people. And, for me now as a consultant, I'm not surrounded by these peers that help these great ideas fire at all times. Now I've got peers like you that I'm able to touch base with, and we're able to connect and keep some of these growth conversations going. So the team is a little bit different now for me, but it's definitely still teamwork, right? So these core values, I was tasked with building core values for the dealership. Um, I really leaned into what would I want to see, and we tweaked some of what I had for the dealership, and I ended up liking those better, and so I have carried those on with me. And I encouraged everybody at our dealership, from the guys that were there for a short time to a long time,
Mhm.
carry these core values with you, and you will see impact in your the four pillars of life for myself are health, wealth, happiness, and love.
Nice.
And so these core values just help you thrive in all four of those pillars. So
Awesome. No, that's great. Now, what do you say to, leaders in organizations? You've got these mission, vision, and values up on the wall, collecting dust. how important is it to live those values? And when you're even in the hiring process, to align the people that you're hiring with those, with the vision and the values.
I'm a big believer. So obviously we've talked training and development, right? I
Yeah.
love the continuous improvement side. I believe training and developing your people at all times cures all problems. It doesn't mean you won't have any problems,
Yeah.
but it will give you the platform to cure all problems, right? So one of the things I enjoy doing when I've got a new leader that I'm working with and I get the chance to go meet them and their team, I like to ask the team, the leader can't jump in and answer, but you start asking the team, what's the mission statement? Or even better, what piece in the mission statement do you identify most with? And
Nice.
watching the blank stares and everybody looks at the leader like, oh no, we're going to let you down. Uh, it, it probably wouldn't shock you, but it could shock a lot of people that have spent hours building those mission statements that their teams don't really know them. They
That's
haven't
right.
embodied them. So, you know, I always had a training and development. My team knew every morning we were going to do our team development. They knew in 45 minutes to an hour throughout the day, each individual is going to get one-on-one training and development. But our morning sessions were always the time to talk mission statement. We would talk mission statement, we would talk core values, and that was just a piece of our training program. So we might, on a 9-step program, we'll train step one, a few weeks, step two, three, we go through that whole process. And then a lot of teams stop there. Well, I've taught it. Well, Rob just joined our team. I taught him the mission statement on week one. Rob learned a billion things on week one. How many times are you reviewing? How many
That's
times are you jumping back into this? You ask a power sports sales team that's been there 2 or 3 years, what brought you here? Why are you selling motorcycles? You could have sold anything in the world. Why motorcycles? And it's something that they've thought about before. It brought them there. They've stayed there for years, but it still takes them a few minutes to really quantify, why am I still here? Uh, you really have to take that needs to be part of your training session. So it can't just be steps in your process. One of your sections in your training program has got to be culture.
Yep.
Uh, so the ability to review those at times, and I like to hand it to them and highlight what line is impactful for you, or just pull bits and pieces. You don't have to know it all. We've got enough time, right? There's a million more days following us after this one, but let's just do a little bit here today.
That's right.
Uh,
No, that's
the
awesome.
constant review.
Awesome. No, that's great. Again, it's a reiteration of going over it, and that goes the same for me in terms of expectations as well. You can't just, if you have expectations, you kind of go through them on the first day, and then you never touch them again. People do forget. They're not, again, I don't like memorizing things. It's not my favorite thing, and I don't expect people to memorize. And I'll give it to them and say, here, post it on your cubicle, on your wall, on your computer, do whatever you want with it, but at least you know it, and every time you forget it, you can refer to it, right? So I
I
really
want to
like.
know that you understand the nature of it.
That's right.
To recite it word for word. We don't need to do the Pledge of Allegiance like when we were in
Yes,
school, but tell me the nuances of it is really what you're looking for. And to touch on your one piece, a lot of teams. I mean, this might be more epidemic than anything else. I watch teams. We need to correct this particular KPI. So we go and we attack it for a week or two, and then it's done. A new KPI jumps in and takes your attention, and so you move on to that. Mastery never happened here. So
yeah,
once we fix this new distraction, this problem ends up resurfacing, and you say, "Well, boss, we did that. It must be the guys. It must be, I don't have a good enough team, or the software's not right." No, we never got mastery. So that's where I think a coach is super impactful. Just help stay on track. Hey, don't get distracted. I realize we can put that other KPI, that other distraction on the list, but
yes,
we've got to get mastery of this. And I always like to, in my program that I put together for my leaders, for them to share with dealer principals or owners, we always talk about the next KPI that's going to be affected. So we put together a training program, either 4 or 6 week training program on this particular piece of our process. But in the foresight section, because I like them to show the dealership owner that they've got wherewithal, right? So here's what's going to happen next. If we fix the number of presentations that we're doing, the next thing that's going to happen is our number of credit apps is going to go down. We're moving more folks to the table. We haven't trained this next piece. Know that this is going to happen. And that way, once it does happen, we know, all right, we've still got 2 weeks of mastery on this. We're not going to jump ahead, you know?
That's right.
So many of them jump around, and, you know, whether it be mission statement or a piece of the process, you've got to stay on task and accomplish mastery. You know, one of the little quotes and sayings, what is it? Amateurs practice till they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong.
That's right. Yes.
That's what we're looking for. So yeah,
That's,
stay on topic.
that's awesome. No, that's great, Chris. Now, I also want to talk about, so you, again, you know, you being very similar in terms of your path as mine. You know, you were in an organization, and I want to understand what led you to come out and become an entrepreneur. Like, at what point did you say, hey, this isn't for me, or I got to try this out? What was that turning point?
So this is where my story might take a turn for what some people might guess, and, you know, might pull a few people onto my bandwagon because you know, they've had the ups and the downs. But I had a phenomenal career at Harley. I've loved my time. I met some of the best leaders, some of the best peers, great friends, great customers. It was phenomenal. However, my wife and I had the opportunity to jump into a family business. I shouldn't say jump into, to purchase a family business and a smaller business, you know, smaller than the franchises that I had been working with,
Mm-hmm.
but still a neat opportunity. And so we jumped into this, and, you know, things were tough. It was not as sales based, it was more service based. So, and our cycles were a long time. So our projects were anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half. So not a ton of sales, which is, you know, where my background is. And I love helping salespeople. And now I'm not getting to do that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 years into it, you know, we had uncovered a few things that, whether intentional or unintentional, a lot of money was owed to customers or product. And, you know, some things that hadn't been disclosed up front. Here nor there, we worked through that because, you know, in our minds, if we take care of the customers, we won't have to worry about us. It's the same theory as, you know, taking care of our team around us, right?
Yes.
So, you know, we end up taking care of all of that, but it got to me. My health was at an all-time low. I mean, from shingles to weight gain to all sorts of things. I mean, just stressed. I wasn't being the father I wanted to be, the husband I wanted to be. It was wild. So I had to stick to my core values. I took some ownership and got a really nice nudge from my wife. And I'll give a shout out to one of my old teammates, Marcus. He
Nice.
called me for, I don't know if it was advice or to vent or what it might have been, but it was on one of my days where I was having an ultimate low. I wasn't happy with this new lot in life. And Marcus and I talked for hours. And he's managing a sales team right now. He was having some struggles with them. You know, he's got guys that are tenured and might have some ego, and he's got brand new guys that are just eager. So he's really got his hands full with all ends of the spectrum. And so after a few hours of conversation, Marcus felt infinitely better about going into his week and being able to wrap his hand around his team, right? That had kind of gotten away from him. And I get home to make dinner, and my wife is baffled. She's like, "Why are you so happy today?" She's trying to figure it out. And, you know, I tell her I just had this great call with Marcus, and I've got this big smile, and I know Marcus does too, because he's always got a big smile. But she says, "This is the husband I want back." She says, I don't know what we need to do about this other business we got ourselves into. I want this husband back. And that was the day it all started to turn, where we started looking at, all right, I'm going to have more conversations with my old sales peers. And we're going to slowly figure out how we can transition this into a employee-owned business rather than us owning the business. It's going to be better for everybody. I got to walk away and hopefully live a little happier. We're rolling dice on that, but it has worked out that way.
Nice.
And you know, to make it an employee-owned business would be phenomenal for the longevity of the business. It's going to help draw in better talent. The guys who were underpaid, I mean, they deserved more, is what I should say. Highly talented men at what they did. It's not an industry that turned a big margin. So this would help that. This would help them be compensated a little more in line with what I thought they deserved. So it was going to be good all around. And here we are. We're coming up on a year out from that, and you know, coaching full time and helping teams get better. And I will say, helping people has been by far the best thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. For an introvert, to say that people are the big change for me is wild, but it's true. It feeds me.
Nice. Again, I think if you're a true leader, you really understand that and you feel that, because the fulfillment you get from helping people is far beyond anything else.
Yes.
So I definitely get what you're saying. So sticking with that, and you know, the experience that you went through, Chris, the question I have for you is burnout as a leader a real thing? Because again, some people think you know, leaders are this unhuman or inhuman folks that don't go through that. And how does it impact your health? And what advice would you give people that are going through it in silence?
Whoa, that's a big one to unpack, Rob. That is a tough question. Um, so what I
Like you
I
went
do
through
believe.
this, right?
What's that?
I said you kind of went through this yourself. You know, you talked about having those health issues. Now, again, I don't
Yeah.
know if your situation, you did it in silence or you were actually talking to people, but there are people, again, they want to maintain that toughness, that ego that comes in, especially for men, I would say. What advice would you give them? Because you experienced that.
So I was going back to earlier days, but yeah, so through that, it's not, I was a suffer through silence guy.
Mm.
So, you know, I live here in Indiana. I was born and raised on a farm here, you know, and part of that farm boy lifestyle is suck it up, right?
Yeah,
You deal with it.
that's right.
So the world's mean, get over it. I've heard that a billion times from my dad, my wife, my father-in-law. I will say through this, early on, I was suffering through suffering through it in silence, and that was a pretty lonely road. Uh, not, I didn't make my best decisions because I was keeping it all in, right? So there's no clarity being provided. Sometimes even you talking, you don't even need the feedback,
That's
and
right.
you can provide yourself clarity. Um, Again, through my wife's nudging, and Marcus, who ended up, you know, I leaned on him. I called him a week or two later, and I let him know what that call did for me.
Nice.
And him and I have stayed better connected. So we're doing a coaching and consulting thing for each other, essentially. But just because we're good friends at this point and care. So uh, I started leaning on Marcus, and Marcus encouraged me to lean on some of my peers here because he lives across the country now. Um, and so I did, and I will say that I mean, I could cry right now. I could drop a tear thinking about how quickly folks dropped everything they had to come help. All they needed was to know that I was in need. And you know, for pretty much everybody, that just meant a conversation, some clarity. You know, help me talk through this. Um, because I don't care how talented you are, or how many times you've done it. Having someone else a little removed is a big deal. So I started talking to peers. I started asking friends, and that was to help get through the hard time. Now we've got this coaching and consulting business, and I'm still finding myself happier about it. Um, Reaching out to folks. I've realized people want to help. Chris, this has served you so much.
That's
Why
right.
would you deprive anyone else the opportunity of helping someone as well? And I know I'm going to be wildly thankful afterwards. They're going to feel good about it as well. So, shame on me if I'm finding all of this joy in helping folks, but I'm not giving my peers the opportunity to help me. So, I've actually, a few friendships have turned into probably lifetime friendships because I've finally realized, oh, you can ask people for help. It's not a burden. In fact, it's a joy. So, yeah, anybody that's out there that is thinking they need to suffer on their own, by all means, you can, reach out to Rob or you can reach out to
That's right.
peers. You can, um, I've had just last week, I had a call from a number I didn't know. It was a friend of one of the young men that I helped, and he really needed to vent. He was having a hard day. He was ready to walk away from his job, what he was doing. And so the young man that I'm helping said, take my call with Chris. And so we have a conversation, and fortunately did not solve the world's problems that day, but he is still with them. He's going to continue with them. And he does have a new outlook on what he's doing day to day. So, yeah, call. A lot of folks, even professionals, aren't going to charge you for one phone call. They're going to see if they can help.
That's right.
So, yeah, just reach out and don't be too proud. Don't be a jerk. Don't deprive them the opportunity of the joy of helping you.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what, Chris, sometimes I think what I find is people would rather talk to someone that they didn't know or that didn't know
Right?
them because they'd be kind of less judgmental on their situation, right? So
Yep.
I always encourage people to reach out. It's so important to to ask for help. You're just a human being. I've seen the toughest, meanest people break down. So it's not about the size or how tough you think you are. And I personally, like, I offer 30-minute free sessions to anybody who wants to reach out just for consultation sessions. And those have turned into, breakdown sessions. And I've tried my best to help. And I know that not everyone's got the means to, pay for an expensive coaching package. So I said, look, I'll help you to whatever capacity that I can. And sometimes even that half an hour or an hour gives them that aha moment.
Yep.
Right. And
Yep.
that's the most important. That's all you need is like you talk it out. I'll just ask you the questions, but you're going to hear yourself and say, oh shit, like this is where the problem is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
We mentioned that earlier, right? Just talking through it.
That's
You
right.
don't even need a big word of advice a lot of times, or, hey, do this neat process I've got. We've got a lot of those. We've got tricks and things like that, tools to use. But yeah, a lot of times it's just the quick conversation is all you really needed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Chris, what advice would you give young professionals wanting to get into leadership?
Mm. So thinking about the young professional side, it seems like one of the things I am bumping into a lot recently are younger folks that don't have the leadership position yet, but they know they want to move into that, right?
Yes.
So how do I lead? They don't use that language. I use the language lead up. But how do I lead up? How do I show that I'm a leader? How do I be a leader without the title? And a lot of folks like,
Yes.
well, I can't be a leader. I'm not a manager. They haven't given me, well, they're not going to knight you, not without seeing the work first. So I always encourage to be a beacon of information, be a beacon of positivity and information. So that was the big thing for me early on in sales. I'm this introvert who does not want to be salesy and hokey and the stereotypical used car salesman, right? So
Yes.
I'm studying as to why. What are the benefits? Is it a couple coming in to look at this motorcycle? And Rob, I dare you to tell me one other way you can sit that close with your partner and not even have to talk. and feel that kind of connection.
Yeah.
Or, was I learning how to sell to the stat-based young man who wanted a race bike, essentially? So you start studying all these, and then you look to your left and you look to your right, and all your peers have the same struggles. So you start to share those. And then you start to follow up with, hey, did you try that one yet? Hey, that word track, did it work? You goofed it again. You're going to try it again today. Like, you just start to, you're a catalyst
Yes.
for all of these people to start getting better and start enjoying. And then we're all starting to smile together. And I mean, you start to feel a vibration on a team when you're working together, and you've got one or two people that really start bringing everybody with them. Oh, it's intoxicating, right?
Powerful.
So I would encourage people to, you have to make yourself better anyways, right? I mean, if you care enough to ask the question of how do I be a leader, then you care enough to get better every day. So go ahead and start with yourself, get better every day. But then all those little nuggets that you get, don't keep them to yourself. Do not. That's where, well, I don't want everybody else to get as good as me.
Yes.
Oh no, that's a poor leader's mentality. You have to share it and know that if they get better, you have to be excited for them. Hey, now teach me how to do it that well. Now teach all of us how to do it.
That's
it's
right.
not always the guy that can sell the best that makes the best leader.
Yes.
It's going to be the guy that can teach and lead and develop and be the catalyst for energy. So yeah, learn for yourself and then share it.
Absolutely. Don't hoard the information.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we wrap things up, Chris, as we're coming up to the hour, two things. One is, what is your unconventional definition of leadership? And the second is, where can people find Chris?
I like both of those. Thank you for the last one. I wouldn't have thought about it. I'm so excited to talk leadership. I would have forgot about where to find me at. All right. So give me the first one again so I can.
Your unconventional definition of leadership.
So my unconventional view on leadership or definition of leadership. A leader is somebody who needs to stay dedicated to their people with grace and humility.
Mm-hmm.
I had to drop in the dedicated piece because that staying dedicated to the process, right? Staying dedicated to your people. And then the grace and humility is the same. I use it interchangeably with how you say lead through love. But show them how to fail. Show them that failing's okay. Show them that you've done it too and you've still gotten to where you're at. Show them how to fail and make it look right. Even how to, say it in front of a customer. If you and I are a customer here face to face, you're going to fall on your face at some point. Show them what that looks like. Hey, I get so excited about what we're selling here. Let me take a step back and think for a moment. Just show them how to handle those situations. But
that's right.
With grace and humility is the key there.
Awesome.
And then where to find me? LinkedIn is probably best. I am not the best poster. That is actually a 2024 goal of mine. I prefer staying connected with these one-on-one and small group conversations that, maybe it's stage fright, maybe it's something else. I don't know. But LinkedIn is by far the best way to reach me. But through that, I've got my cell phone number on there. I have my email and my website. Everything is on there. I am also on Instagram and Facebook. However, I do keep those as family-based, which my Instagram this year, as I post on LinkedIn, I am also going to post on my Instagram more religiously this year. However, you'll find more positivity about being dad, about staying dedicated and taking ownership through, being a better father and husband. So I am going to try and dedicate Instagram and Facebook to that. But it is still continuous improvement. It is still going to be growth and leadership, right? It's just a different facet, leading the family. So we'll see how those go. But Evard86 on Instagram, Chris Evard on LinkedIn, Evard Coaching and Consulting is the website.
Awesome. And for those who forget that, don't worry, I will leave it at the bottom of the post as after you watch this podcast when it comes out. So don't worry about anything. I will have all those set for everyone. Again, I wanted to thank Chris very much for this amazing podcast. Sharing the great experience that you had. I think again, it's going to resonate with a lot of people, Chris. And I think hopefully out of this, people will reach out and talk to you and ask you for help, because again, you've got that niche that not a lot of people have. So again, thank you very much. And for all those, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for future episodes of the RK Leadership podcast. And if you have any questions, please share them below, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.